Hello, welcome to prospecting principle number 5 on knowledge base 4.5.5. This one is called the opposing prospecting elements or verses, and there's 3 in particular I want to chat about today. The first one is understanding the relationship between prospecting and follow-up. And those 2 things, prospecting for your next client or whatever it is, and then following up on those prospects, those are the bookends of our business. The magic happens in between the two, but it's those are the 2 main primary things. You could even argue that follow-up is really a form of prospecting. It's just prospecting people you've already prospected. Okay. Now the inverse relationship between the two, the teeter-totter, as I often say, is that the more you do of one, the less you need to do of the other, within reason. So if you do a ton of upfront prospecting, which very few people do, and is, by the way, the absolute number 1 secret in the business, but the more you do of the upfront prospecting, the less follow-up you have to do. And follow-up is one of those things that it creates a tremendous amount of frustration in the sales business, because you know that what you're doing is you're almost to a degree bugging people that you've already prospected about taking the next step. But you do have to do it. But the more you do prospecting up front, the less you have to do this kind of almost nagging type of follow-up. Alternatively, the less prospecting you do, you better do more follow-up. But the ideal situation is that you do so much prospecting on the front end that you virtually do no follow-up at all, other than the follow-up that your prospects are asking you to do. Because there is going to be a small subsection of the group of people that you prospect that will actually tell you, hey, I am interested in your offering, but I'm not ready right now. Feel free to follow up with me. Or when you offer that, you can sense that they're willingly letting you do it. Where many times they'll say that just to get you off the phone or get you out of their face. The truth of it, in your heart of hearts, you know that they really want to say no, but they're being polite. But again, there is a subset that actually want you to. But to get to that subset, you have to go through a large amount of numbers up front. Now, of course, you could argue that you should do both of them a lot, but you just don't have the hours in the day to do both of them at a high level, in my opinion. So the suggestion, I guess I want to say, is that what you really want to do is you need to do a brute force, massive amount upfront prospecting at an absolute minimum of 4 brand new contacts or prospects or connection attempts on a daily basis, minimum 5 days a week. I can tell you right now, I've been training people for 30 years, and no one, including me, does that consistently. I built my business that I have now basically 3 times, almost from scratch, not completely, but almost from scratch 3 times in my career. And the last time I did it was I contacted between 50 to 100 people a day, no joke. And I'm not talking email, I'm talking either on the phone or face-to-face, actual prospecting, for over 6 months straight, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And I know I can't sustain that for a long time, and I probably couldn't or shouldn't or wouldn't want to do it now. After 30 years in, you do get a little tired, but it was that period of time where I did massive prospecting. And what I see people do is 1 or 2 a week, 3 or 4 a month. It's never going to happen. If you're going to do it at a lower level like that, you better do a lot of follow-up. You've got to make a choice. Which should you rather do? I know that if between the two, I'd rather prospect a new person than follow an existing. Because when you're following up to existing people, especially if you're the one following up with them, not when they're calling you and say, hey, I've been thinking about what you said, a few months ago, and I want to get more information. That's a whole different feel. But when you're bugging them, you're begging them, you're calling, you're emailing, you're texting, or whatever it is that you're doing to follow up, part of you feels like you're in a begging mode. So I'm suggesting to you, I'm still telling you should do it, but prospect more up front. Then the follow-up is not as painful. Okay, let me go to the next one. There's more suggestions on knowledge base. I'll jump to the next one here. Prospecting versus selling. So what this means, it's simple, but it's not always easy to implement. And that simply means that understanding the difference between making an offering, initial offering, so to speak, to other humans about what you do, what you have, what you're selling, whatever. And two, once you're with them, now persuading them or at least influencing them to take action or to see that what you're offering is a benefit to them. One is an art, one is a science. Both do have elements of each of the others, but prospecting is much, much more of a science, and selling, persuading, presenting, all that is much more of an art. Though again, both of them have elements of the other. So prospecting is much, much more of a numbers game and just a science of saying this, saying, offering this thing, saying this prospecting line or opening, whatever that happens to be. I believe the coffee script is by far the best to a large number of people is really almost scientific. This would be perfect for, Data or Spock from Star Trek, right? Where it's take the emotions out of it. Don't worry about what their response is, what their reaction is. Also, don't try to over technique it. Don't. There's an old saying is you can't give the wrong presentation to the right person. It's not 100% true, but there is truth to it, which is if you're offering a service, a product, something that you're counseling, something that you're offering, people either want it or don't. They're either ready for it or they're not, for the most part. And so you've got to look at it like that and not get too caught up in one, the how you respond emotionally to that initial reaction when you present that offering, or not present the whole offering, but present the opportunity to listen to more. And also get away from getting too caught up in what you say and how you say it. To a degree, yes, you have to learn your lines, you have to learn the words, you have to track it over time, but don't get too caught up in it. Just think about yourself. This is the greatest technique in the history of the human race, is put yourself in their shoes. What would you do? If you're being prospected something, you're being offered something by someone, is it really going to matter how they offer it to you? Are you really influenced to a large degree? Does your decision making change based upon how they do it? Maybe somewhat. If someone's really a jerk about it, no matter how, or you don't like their personality, no matter how great the offering is, you'll probably just try to find that same offering with someone else. On the other hand, if you really, really like someone and they're really sympathisch with you, right? You might give them an opportunity to go into kind of their presentation, even if you're not sure if you want it, because you like the guy or gal so much, or you appreciate the way they do it. Of course, there's extremes. But for the most part, that 80% in the middle, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how they say it. Once you grasp what it is they're offering, you've already made a decision whether you want to do it or not, right? Or at least whether you want to look into it further or not. So go back to now you being the prospector, I'm telling you, look at prospecting more of a science, almost a little bit robotic, and just kind of machine-like. Now, once you're in front of them, once you have their undivided attention, you're going into presentation mode, selling mode, persuasion mode, influence mode. Now you do need to learn and employ people skills, sales skills, persuasion skills, and how to do that. Funny thing is, many people flip it around. I see advisors that spend way too much time perfecting their prospecting technique. In reality, what it is, it's avoidance behavior. Instead of just going to talk to 20 people today, they spend 3 hours fine-tuning and perfecting their prospecting approach when they haven't even spoken to anyone to even know if it works. It's all just theory in their head. Well, I'm going to say it this way. Why don't you just try it? Why don't you just, if you got a hold of a prospecting line, an opening line, an introduction of some sort, again, the coffee script's the best, just why don't you try it on 20 people and see what happens? Because what you think works might not really work. Okay. But then what they also do is then when they're in selling mode, they have this attitude, well, I don't sell. I just offer them, A or B, or just offer them the offering and let them choose. Well, that's going to be a hard road too. Okay. Because once you have their attention and once they're listening and there's a semblance of an interest in what you have, now they are going to, whether it's conscious or unconsciously, judge you by your people skills, by your listening qualities, by the questions you ask. So once you're in front of a client and you're doing the presentation, then the sales skills do matter. If you think that you're just an order taker and you're just going to present, what you have, and then they're going to decide, that's much too simplistic. That is a naive view of the way the world works. So I'm not talking about, of course, any kind of anything unethical, but it does matter how you say things. And just like when you first prospected your husband or your wife, you didn't just lay out facts. This is who I am. These are my finances. These are my beliefs, and then choose. No, you had to make a human connection, and that's what professional sales at least is all about. So understand that there is a time and place to be just kind of mathematical, academic, um, uh, technical, and just throw it out there and see what bites. And there is a time for when now you need to, your personality has to come out. You have to be pleasant. You have to guide the conversation, overcome objections, and do it all in the proper way, which we call professional selling. And that's what this is. This is the idea of understanding the difference between getting people. Your job is finding people to tell your story, who will listen to your story, and then telling the story. The act of finding people that will listen to your story is prospecting, and that is leans much more towards the technical, mathematical, just like I said, data and Spock are great examples of who would be good at that. And then the other side is when you're actually in front of them. Now you turn your sales skills on. Okay, last one we'll talk about here in terms of this versus concept in prospecting, which is relationship versus technique. So on top of everything I said above, also take into account that it does depend what your existing relationship already is between yourself and the prospect, on how much technique you use and how much more of just your relationship is being leveraged. Because once again, to stress again, all of the above I've already gone through do still have elements of the other. So even the prospecting, which I'm claiming over and over again is mostly just kind of data driven, still has some personality to it, right? It isn't just being data and Spock. There is a little bit. It's just a lot less. So what I mean by this is when you have a really hot market, you can see on the screen, hot market, warm market, people like your best friends, your family, people you want to use much less selling technique. You want to speak the way you normally speak to them. You don't want to turn into, the professional mode. Okay. Doesn't mean you never use any techniques, by the way, but they have to be a little bit disguised. It's almost like the way I'm a big MMA fan. It's like if you're sparring with someone, or you have an MMA fight with someone, whatever sparring session, and you're sparring with someone that you sparred with in the past. You've got to hide some of your techniques because they know what you do. They sparred with you before, right? So anything that you want to use that might help you in this quote unquote fight is you have to be much more obfuscated, or it has to be much more obfuscated than with let's say a stranger, because this person knows you better and they can tell, oh, he's trying to sneak one in on me, right? But also, when the further you go into a cold market, the further away you go, and it is a spectrum. It's not just black and white. The further away you go from the person like the old expression about he's like a used car salesman. He acts like he's known you forever and you met him 5 minutes ago. That's a typical scenario of a salesman that is trying to use a relationship type of attitude, conversational tone, when there is no relationship, and that just comes off inauthentic and blows the whole thing. So the further away you go from the people that know you, the more you do want to use kind of technique. I know people don't like the word technique, but just conversational mechanisms, right? Sales mechanisms. And that's much more of a science. When they say this, I say that. Here's when I pause. Here's when I listen. Here's when I ask a question. Here's when I don't ask a question and offer more information. All the things you've learned. And this might seem obvious, but people screw it up. So you want to be a little bit cognizant of that, is that the more you're in a coldish market, the more you want to use your, how to win friends, influence people type of techniques. But the more you are closer with someone, the more, frankly, you want to leverage the relationship itself. Again, leverage is not always a good word to use. I don't mean it in a negative way, but if a friend of mine that I knew very well asked me hey, I'm now selling I work at a furniture store, and I want to share with you, if you don't mind, man. Just let me show you kind of the stuff we got. I would give him a much more opportunity to do that than someone that I just met 10 minutes ago, right? Or someone I met 10 minutes ago that maybe I met in the cigar lounge and we're to strike up a conversation. If he jumps in right away and leverages this 10-minute relationship to get me to take a look at the furniture he has on his phone, it's not going to work. But if he or she is a good conversationalist, is not over pushing this, but brings it up occasionally, maybe even every once in a while sprinkles in a question about, is furniture and is interior design something that's important to you, and whatever, and the conversation goes well, there may come a time in 30 minutes later where all of a sudden I'm looking at his phone and I'm looking at all the opportunities that he has in his furniture store. Of course that can happen, but you got to play it right. Okay, so you got to be cognizant about how that works. So those are probably the three main kind of opposing ideas with each other that are important in the whole idea of prospecting and sales, and keeping those things in mind. Hopefully that helps, and may you forever follow the path of Murrayism.